From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ijoma Onyato.
At least 10 people killed as Boko Haram terrorists attacked stranded passengers in the village of Auno near Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, leaving about 18 vehicles burnt. A federal high court Abuja grants former Attorney General of the Federation, Muhammad Adoke, bail in the sum of 50 million naira on fresh money laundering charges filed by the EFCC. House of Representatives Committee questions insurance method adopted by the head of service of the Federation for MDAs, says action is unethical and goes against the Constitution. And Chinese President Xi Jinping makes rare public appearance amid the new coronavirus outbreak as he visits health workers in Beijing treating infected patients. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, the FCT, and of course, later on, we'll head off to our studios in London.
On business news tonight, Minister of State for Petroleum to send new version of the petroleum industry bill to lawmakers next week, targets mid-2020 for passage.
And on sports news tonight, Governor Godwin Obaseki declares open Edo State Sports Festival to showcase the state's readiness for the 21st National Sports Festival.
And from Abuja, as the United Nations count down to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals by nations of the world, tonight we begin an assessment of Nigeria's readiness to meeting that deadline in 2030.
At least 10 people have been killed by suspected Boko Haram terrorists, most of them travelers said to be stranded last night near Maiduguri, the Borno state capital. The travelers reportedly stopped around the village of Auno as they could not make it into the city center before the start of the curfew at 6 p.m. But the attackers came out of their hiding places around 10 p.m. and opened fire on them as they slept inside their vehicles. An infuriated Governor Babagana Zulum, who visited the scene, challenged the military to be alive to their responsibilities.
If these pictures could be transformed into words, they would sound something like this. Crowd panic usually occurs during times of distress, and for the residents of Auno, a village close to Maiduguri, they have been hit by an incident that fits that bill. A gruesome attack by suspected Boko Haram terrorists has left not only vehicles burned, but several people killed. The attack happened Sunday night as travelers approached Maiduguri, which gate, unfortunately for them, had been shut. In the dead of night, the invaders came, and the rest is the destruction before you. The state governor is here, and he is not happy. He faults the army for its absence in the area, which leaves people open to danger.
We made several attempts for Nigerian military to establish their unit in Auno. They are in Auno, but as soon as it is 5 o'clock, they close the gate, they lock people, and they will go back to Maiduguri. That is what has happened. No, that's right. That is right. So you can just tell us something. If you are willing to establish your unit in Auno, fine. If you cannot establish your unit in Auno, the unit has already been established. 30 lives were lost here. Yes. That was what we said, what was told to me by the populace.
The theater commander of Operation Lafia Dole disputes the figure. He also harps on the curfew placed on Auno and other volatile areas that should be obeyed.
The report that 30 people died is misleading, is inciting, and it is totally false. And please let us note, these people were not attacked when the road was opened. These are people that are not supposed to be on the road. And it's not only Auno we are having this problem. Auno, Jekana, Minok, Igamdu, Kukareta, you see 100 and 200 and vehicle line up.
It may seem that surveillance of hotspots is a challenge the military have to surmount to keep people safe to avoid a repeat attack.
Meanwhile, the president has commiserated with the families of victims of the attack and promising that his administration will continually frustrate the devilish operations of Boko Haram. A statement from the presidency says President Buhari condemned what he described as the murderous and cowardly attack on innocent passengers by the terrorists near Maiduguri. He also condoled the Borno state government, warning that the terrorist days are numbered. President Buhari also gave the international community the assurance of his administration's commitment to secure the release of all children and other victims of abductions by terrorists in Nigeria. The president renewed this pledge at a high-level breakfast dialogue during the side event at the 33rd AU Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. We move on now, and while the president seeks an end to terrorism at the Continental Summit, his West African neighbors are scrutinizing one of his regional policies. The Authority of ECOWAS Heads of State and Government, headed by President Christian Kabore of Burkina Faso, has constituted a committee to study and make a full report on Nigeria's land border closure with her neighbors. The decision to set up the committee was agreed at an extraordinary session of the ECOWAS leaders in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, on the sidelines of the 33rd AU Summit. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyema, told journalists after the 3-hour closed-door session that the meeting was attended by President Buhari and chaired by the ECOWAS chairman, President Muhammadu Isufu of Niger Republic. The leaders also discussed West Africa's new single currency, the ECO, and the situation in Guinea-Bissau after the presidential election there. Now, let's take a look at some judicial matters. A federal high court in Abuja has granted bail to a former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Muhammad Adoke. Justice Binta Murtala Nyako granted him bail, along with the second defendant, Aliyu Abubakar, on the same terms and conditions earlier granted by Justice Idris Kuchigi of the FCT High Court, Gwagwalada. These included bail in the sum of 50 million naira and one surety in like sum.
The road to freedom for former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice appears to be hazy, as the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission on Monday rearraigned him and his co-defendant, Aliyu Abubakar, before the Federal High Court in Abuja on fresh money laundering charges. They were arraigned on 7-count charges, with Mr. Adoke having 6 counts, while Mr. Abubakar had 1 count preferred against him. In respect of the Malibu oil scam, they, however, pleaded not guilty to the 7-count charge. With a plea of not guilty, Justice Murtala Nyako granted bail to the defendants on the same conditions earlier imposed by an Abuja High Court. The judge notes that even though the case filed before Justice Idris Kuchigi and the one before her are different suits, both courts are of coordinate jurisdiction. She, however, ordered the EFCC to deposit Mr. Adoke's passport at the FCT High Court in Gwagwalada. The prosecutor defends the new charges, while the lawyer to the second defendant claims the charges are the same.
Theft is not the same thing as money laundering. The reason why we are filing charges before the Federal High Court is because under the Money Laundering Prohibition Act, it clearly states that it's the Federal High Court that has jurisdiction in respect of money laundering cases and offenses committed under the Money Laundering Prohibition Act.
Well, basically, the charge before the FCT High Court is in the nature of alleged giving of and receipt of gratification. Whereas the charge here has to do with the alleged count of money laundering. The same amount of 300 million naira alleged to have been offered and received as gratification is the same 300 million naira that is subject matter of this money laundering count.
After admitting the defendants to bail, the court fixed April 1st and 2nd for the commencement of trial.
Also in court today was the national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, which is Secondus, and some members of the party's National Working Committee who appeared before a Lagos State High Court judge to stop contempt of court proceedings brought against them. Well, this is the result of alleged disobedience to a court order of November the 12th, 2019, restraining Mr. Secondus and the NWC from conducting a special election for the vacant offices at the Lagos State chapter of the party. Justice Taufika Toyekan Abdullahi was disappointed that the Lagos PDP proceeded to conduct the election despite knowledge of the case and then a pending application for interlocutory injunction. At today's proceedings, counsel to the claimants informed the court of his client's pending applications, seeking for an extension to file their response to the preliminary objection. After listening to arguments on the preliminary objection, the judge fixed March the 12th to hear the contempt proceedings. Let's take a break for some legal matters now. Lawyers in the House of Representatives Committee are concerned about the insurance methods used by the head of service of the Federation in conjunction with an insurance company, Capital Express Insurance. During an investigative hearing with the managing director of the company, the Committee on Insurance questioned why the data of civil servants were not first collected before premiums were paid to the company. Our correspondent Terry Kumi reports.
Because those data do not reside.
Mandated by the House of Representatives to look into the insurance components of all the ministries, departments and agencies. The House Committee on Insurance meets with the insurance company which provides cover for all ministries, departments and agencies under the office of the head of service. The committee questions why data of the staff are not collected at the beginning of the insurance process.
You know that this act is clearly stated here that you should have the data, the detail of any person you are doing business with. Have you respected the Constitution or the Act in any way, or you have not?
I have not told you that I do not have data. I told you that we don't get data at the beginning. What is usually done is that we can base, premium on total estimation of salaries.
All these is an unethical.
The committee's insistence on providing the documents containing the data unsettles her.
Which documents?
This one, this data you are using to reconcile.
Sir, I want you to get my flow. I need you to get my flow, Mr. Chairman. I need you to get my flow. You need to get this flow and how this thing works. We go from ministry to get data.
So no matter the number of staff, whether legitimate or otherwise, you don't carry out any verification of any sort. You just collect that data and premium is paid to you for that data. So if there were ghost workers, you have just indirectly colluded with whatever agency it is.
We have not in any way colluded with any government agency. There is no how we will know whether Mr. X or a Mr. B or a Mr. A is a ghost worker.
From the inception of the business,
both parties struggle to find a meeting point as Mrs. Odukale denounces a submission which the chairman of the committee alleges that she made.
They are not in support of this process that's been adopted because it runs foul with the Constitution. That's exactly what you wrote.
I did not agree with that, but I'll get it.
Then there is no way you can keep us here wasting our time.
You have said,
Tell us
you
straight
can't
what you said.
quote to me the letter that I've written. What I have told you is that there's no point anybody twisting. I won't twist anything, and I wouldn't want this table to put words in my mouth.
You are bringing the letter, right?
The agreements, I have agreed with you here on this table to say that the fact that data were not collected at the inception of policies is not the proper thing to do.
The committee insists that the actions of the company are unethical and all documents must be provided for every government institution which the company covers. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, members of the civil society groups march in Lagos in memory of late social activist Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti, condemned the deregistration of political parties and rising insecurity in the country. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.